Black Scully on check. Got a little workout gear on check. Welcome to another marvelous episode on today's docket, man. I can't believe, what is it, episode 48 already? On our Into the News segment, we're going to talk about Marrow, and he flipped to Louisville recently from Kentucky. He became Louisville's general manager. He coached Jeff Brohm, a top 10 coach in all of college football. Also, in our Into the News segment, we're going to look at Bret Bielema, and Bret Bielema, my apologies, and he compares Gabe Jacas to J.J. Watt, and Urban Meyer said that Tennessee flat out screwed without Nico Iamaleava. Also on today's docket, on our Governor React segment, we're going to look at Bleacher report, and that was today that they dropped the top 8 most exciting players in all of college football. We're going to talk about that today. And on Governor's ruling, July 1st is here. So what does that mean for the new era of NIL, or NIL 2.0 as some people are calling it? And for around the nation, we got Pac-12 is back, and they're back with a vengeance. We talked about them a little bit yesterday. We're going to talk more about the conference and more of our expectations heading into the 2026 season. Governor College Football, hashtag Go CFB. CFB Nation, your only college football destination. Let's get it. Governor of college football, we're going to recap ACC.
Hey, that's CJ
defensive
on
minds. They have to be better on that side of the Alrighty, into the news. It is officially July 1st. We are now 7 days to the exact day away from Big 12 Media Days. I can't wait to go to that. We got news that we will be on Radio Row at ACC Media Days. We're also going to the American Media Days, and maybe we'll make a short pit stop at SEC Media Days. We're waiting on a few credentials to come in for that. So this isn't a very exciting time of the year. So when you've been making content the entire off season, you start getting excited when we start to hear about, the organized team workouts, or circuit training, as I like to call it, where kind of, the team goes through military type tactics, kind of type training. And it's really just to focus on leadership and just pushing yourself to the edge. And then, of course, we get ready for, spring camp, and then we get the spring news. We get excited for that. And then, spring ends, and then the transfer portal begins. And then we kind of just, looking at semantics all together, and just kind of look at how bad things are with college football. And I don't think it's a quite like, how bad things are type of ordeal. More so than it's just, we got time to talk, so we just going to talk about it in the ways that we feel like we want to talk about it. So then after that, you kind of have this dry period. Everybody's releasing their post-spring rankings and all of that stuff. Their top players, top quarterbacks in this conference or that conference. Just kind of making time go by, just, constantly putting out content, constantly looking at the sport. How can the sport be better? And now we're kind of at that phase where, media days are in reach. Now we get to, be around coaches, be around players, and kind of get those sound bites and stuff that are most important heading into the season. So this is a fun time of year. It's July. We're 7 days away from Big 12 Media Days. SEC Media Days will be right after that. And then I think Big 12 and ACC always happen at the same time. I'm sorry, Big 10 and the ACC always happen around the same time. So I'm always go to ACC just because of our relationship with the conference. But it's going to be exciting. We're going to the American as well. So we got a lot coming up. And then we have a new docuseries with the Toledo Rockets coming up right after that. So the season starts now for CFB Nation. But let's get into the news. Jeff Brohm. Is Jeff Brohm a top 10 coach? Now, if you ask me, I think that you can ask anybody, and they could probably name 10 coaches that, in their opinion or in their estimation, that are better than Jeff Brohm. I'm a huge Jeff Brohm fan. I believe in his abilities. I think we kind of saw the difference in his tenure in Purdue, and then what happened after he left the program, and then we saw what he's been able to do in his time in Louisville. And a lot, the first year, a lot of those players were Scott Satterfield's players, and they played, better than they did when Scott Satterfield was there. So you could tell he's just a leader of men. We've been around him for 2 years now at ACC Media Days, and we kind of get that feeling that he's a no nonsense type of guy. So it's great to be around him. You see what he's building in Louisville, and what he's building is a team that is always going to contend in the ACC. When we start looking at teams that have opportunities to win the conference, or they're going to be right there in the thick of things, Louisville is, I think, going to be a constant I think the hardest thing, and even though Louisville is kind of home for Brohm, both of the Brohm, Sim and Brian Brohm as well, their offensive coordinator, it's, you start seeing what they're doing, and maybe higher level Power 4 schools are looking like, hey, you see what Jeff Brohm is doing? He's had, year one went and got Jack Plummer via the portal. Year two, from Cal. And then year two, he went and got Tyler Shuck from the portal. Jack Plummer's in the NFL. He plays for the Carolina Panthers. Tyler Shuck was just the third quarterback selected in the 2025 NFL draft. So if you look at his success and what he's able to do and how he's able to develop, and Kyle, he kind of uses high school and the portal at about the same clip, probably high school a little bit more, but he uses the portal very well as well. So I think he's a program builder. I think he's a developer. Is there an argument for him being a top 10 coach? Absolutely. But could you name 10 coaches better than him? You probably could, based on resume, based on merit, based on a lot of, different categories, whatever you guys, however you want to quantize it. But is he a top 10 coach, and is Vince Marrow blowing smoke? No, I truly believe that he thinks that, Jeff Brohm is a top 10 coach. I believe he's contended for a top 10 coach, for sure. Bret Bielema, Gabe Jacas, or Jacas, I don't know how to pronounce his name. Jacas had a great year last year. And when you look at it, the fact that, Bret Bielema, who coached at Wisconsin, right? And we look at the fact that, he coached there, but he says that this Gabe Jacas kid reminds him of J.J. Watt. He had 13 tackles for loss last season, 8 sacks a season ago, 3 forced fumbles in 2024. And according to Bielema, he nearly got poached by a Southern program with a massive NIL offer while not in a portal. Alrighty. Now, let's read the tea leaves. Let's be smart about this. Let's analyze this in an educated way. So, we saw recently that Bret Bielema talked about their running back, McCray, that they lost via the portal to Georgia. They said he wasn't in the portal, then he was in the portal. 12 hours later, he was in Champaign, and now he was in Athens. So he didn't want to directly say, hey, that's poaching. They had to have impermissible contact with him. There's no way that he just enters the portal and then boom, he's already in Athens. So these players are, these teams are having impermissible contact with players, whether you like it or not. Because you got to think about it. A lot of these programs already have relationships with these players. If you think about the high school recruiting process and how, you go on a visit here, you go on a visit there, and there may be a coach at a university that you took a liking to, and that ends up becoming your contact at that university. So you're like, hey, then you have a good relationship with this kid. Reach out to him, see how he's feeling. And while this is indeed impermissible contact, until we start holding people accountable for this impermissible contact, it's going to continue to happen. So Bret Bielema is letting everybody know, Lee, I don't know. Like Trent Dilfer said it flat out. He said, if I catch you in one of my players' DMs, it's going to be a problem. Like, I feel like that's what Bret Bielema almost is. And he said a Southern program, so it makes me believe that it was another SEC school trying to poach one of his players. And it just goes to show, I think Illinois is a budding program. We saw the success that they had last season. I believe they can have that success and then some this upcoming season. It's imperative for this team to be successful, but it's kind of hard to have continued success when you're up and coming, even though they are in a huge pond. That is the Big Ten. The Big Ten probably played the best football out of all of the conferences over the last couple of years. It's just interesting that players, and teams, these players continue to have people in their DMs, continue to have people hitting their phones, and teams are having impermissible contact. But until we have some type of coalition or commission that stops this type of activity, it's going to continue to happen. So at what point do we say enough is enough? We're tired of our players being poached. What are we actually going to do about it? And we need something that's in black and white where there's no gray areas. If you do this, then these are the fines. If this is your second time caught, then these are the fines. If it's your second time caught, then we should start talking about you guys shouldn't have any bowl eligibility. That's what we should be talking about. So while I love the game, how pure the game is, it's just some things that we need as it pertains to reform. And I think it's important to have. Coming up next in our Into the News segment, we'll talk about Tony Petitti and his stance on the college football playoffs. Tony Petitti got called out. I forgot what reporter it was that called him out, but they said, hey, we really need to hear your stance and how you feel about the college football playoff, because we haven't heard anything. We heard from Brett Yormark. We heard from Jim Phillips. We heard from Greg Sankey. Well, we hadn't really heard much from Commissioner Tony Petitti. But I think if you monitor Commissioner's Petiti time, in the Big Ten Conference, he kind of moves like a mob boss. I think I'm okay in saying that. I don't think that's no secret to anybody. But something that he's pushing for is playing games and more automatic qualifiers. He's in the Big Ten. Big Ten has won the last 2 national championships. He will be a fool not to ask for more automatic qualifiers. But playing games, I think, adds a really unique element. I think one of the first people I heard talking about the playing game situation is Joel Klatt, and he did a magnificent job explaining it. It's something that the NBA has utilized, and I think it's added element for, you don't know what team's going to get in. Of course, the first 2 teams should be guaranteed. Let's say the Big Ten does get 4, but it'd be nice if, we had a pool of 4 schools fighting for those last 2 spots. I think we get peak college football. And we get that, what Joel Klatt also talks about, the golden era of college football. So the fact that Petiti finally said it, yes, playing games, automatic qualifiers, that just gives another added bonus, because you'll get your conference championship week. And then after that, you'll have your playing games, and then you will start the college football playoff. So you talking about some teams may play upwards to, 14, games before, before the college football playoff start. So that'd be impressive. More college football, I would be happy with that. And even if, the ACC and the Big 12 at a smaller level, if we're going to give them 2 automatic bids, of course the number 1 team would get in. But that second, seed should be a qualifying game. I think that'd be cool too. So I kind of agree with Tony Petiti in that facet. Coming up with our 4th story of the day into the news segment. Nico Iamaleava will represent UCLA at Big Ten Media Days after a $4 million NIL standoff with Tennessee. And I remember, around this time period, I believe this happened early April, and I kind of remember just sitting there like, yo, this is crazy. I remember hearing the news like, oh, okay, Nico is leaving Tennessee. Nico's probably going to get less money. Avery Johnson is probably going to be going to Tennessee. Once again, we're here at that impermissible contact, because he wasn't even in the portal. He was never in the portal. Then we start hearing the thing about TCU's quarterback, Josh Hoover, that, there was mutual interest between he and Tennessee. I don't understand how there can be mutual interest when a player isn't even in the portal. That's why I continue to preach that, hey, we truly do need a commission to hold, these truths and hold these players and these programs accountable. Urban Meyer said it flat out. Tennessee is screwed, and it's hard to argue. Nico threw for 2,600 yards, 19 touchdowns, ran for 3 more a season to go. Now, I do believe in the team will win what Tennessee tries to preach. I do believe in that. While Nico had some, pretty decent stats last year, that team was highly dependent upon an elite defense and a great running game. And that's what they had. But, the veer and shoot or the Art Brow system, with those wide splits, you're able to kind of dictate to the defense, and the defense dictates to the offense what you want us to run. So if you're not going to cover those wide receivers out there, we'll throw them the ball. But, while we got our stack sets and our wide splits and you covering them, and then the numbers say run the ball, we're going to run the ball. So it's very simple system to run in the grand scheme of things. I've said this before on this show. This is no secret. And I'm going to stick to my take, as it pertains to this. I am monitoring closely. And, maybe this is messy. I don't know. But I am monitoring closely. Tennessee wins. And I'm monitoring closely UCLA wins. And don't let UCLA have more wins than Tennessee this upcoming season. Don't let that happen. Because I think we're going to get like that 2022-esque. Not to the same degree, because Josh Heupel has done a phenomenal job in Knoxville. But, so, where we got with, Scott Frost. I think when we look at Twitter, and it was Twitter during this time before, Elon Musk purchased it and it became X. But, when we look at it during that time period, the elite trolling that was happening on the internet, people was trolling the hell out of Scott Frost, and I couldn't get enough of it. Like, I was refreshing my timeline. I'm talking about like every couple of minutes saying what they saying now. You know what I'm saying? Like, I just couldn't wait. Coming up on our next story, we talked about Vince Marrow a little bit earlier, who's the newly named general manager for the Louisville Cardinals, and he's staying in the great state of Kentucky. I think it's interesting that, he's staying in Kentucky, but the way that he left, I think, was very interesting, to be honest with you. So he resigned from Kentucky. We knew he was going to resign from Kentucky, but it was the way that he left. I think, you know, sometimes because this sport is such a niche sport, and athletics is just niche with its own, but you know, at the end of the day, it's still a job. And you know, when I leave a job, I always like to put in a notice. Like I like to put in a, you know, 3-week notice if I can, or even 4-week notice. I know 2 weeks notice is a standard, but I try to put in a greater notice than that. So for those of y'all who don't know, I am doing this full time, and I have put in my notice at my job, and I've always done it professionally. I'll let the person know who hired me. I thank them. I'll shake their hands. I'll talk to them in person, and I'll also give them something in writing, and then I'll CC HR so they can get it. But the fact that Vince Marrow and I thought him and Mark Stoops had such a great relationship, but maybe I don't quite understand the relationship. Maybe their relationship was close enough where he could shoot him a text message like, you know, saying, "Hey, Mark, today is my last day at UK. Thanks for everything." Like, you know, maybe their relationship is, you know, that dope to where he can't. It don't have to be formal. But, you know, I would still want it to be formal. I would want it to go, you know, above and beyond, letting them know, like, hey, I do appreciate everything. And he did say thanks for everything. But via text message, I guess this is just one of those niche things. Am I wrong to feel a way about it? Because I truly do feel a way about it. Like, I'm bothered by it. Because I would hope for it. And it's not the first time we've seen something like this. Like when Jed Fish left Arizona, people were not happy with the way it was done. Like, if I remember correctly, like, it wasn't like an in-person like conversation. It was like, hey, you know, I wish you guys the best of luck, like, type of ordeal. And maybe behind closed doors he did something else, because we're not around these coaches 24/7. Mike Elko, I heard from plenty of sources, like, the way that he left Durham, people weren't happy about it, and they really weren't wishing him a lot of success in College Station last year, even though, you know, his team did a, you know, magnificent job a season ago, and they were just, you know, a game outside of the SEC, you know, championship last year. So kudos to Mike Elko. But I think sometimes we hear these stories about, you know, how coaches leave a program, and you would just think that, you know, Vince Marrow and Mark Stoops had a much closer relationship, but maybe it's so close that it didn't have to be formal. And it doesn't look like Mark Stoops was bothered by it in his response, and just, you know, mentioned to, you know, make sure that he brought in, you know, the things that he needed to bring in. I think it was a company vehicle or something like that, that was owned by the school that he needed to drop off, if I read that correctly. But, you know, it's just always interesting, because it's so niche. It's not like corporate, like in the corporate sphere. So I guess we look at it different. F1 Sports reveals their preseason All Big Ten first team offense. A lot of this is chalk, but I figured, hey, if this is something that people want to report and talk about, we might as well talk about it as well. So at quarterback, they got Drew Aller. You know, that I think that's chalk for the most part. I think most people would probably agree with Drew Aller, while I do believe that Luke Altmaier has a seat at the table. And I'm not sure I didn't look at second team or anything like that. I just wanted this to be a quick part of it, you know, because typically this would have been a Governor's React segment, and we'd have looked at first team, second team, third team, kind of figured out who they omitted, and then other than that, we would have, you know, been able to handle business. But Drew Aller at quarterback. Running backs are Nick Singleton from Penn State, Mekhi Hughes from Oregon, and Jonah Coleman from Washington. Those are the three running backs. All purpose, they got Katron Allen from Penn State, so both of Penn State running backs is on this list. At wide receivers, they got Jeremiah Smith from Ohio State, stud freshman from a year ago. Elijah Surratt, Indiana, who came over by the way of JMU the previous year, so he's been with Cignetti for a while. Carnell Tate, Ohio State, and there's a lot of buzz about Carnell Tate heading into this upcoming season, and, you know, moving forward into the 2026 NFL draft as well. Tight end Max Clare, he's been on a lot of preseason watch lists for a tight end position, not just in the Big Ten Conference, but also nationally. With like the preseason All-American rankings, you see Max Clare up there a lot. Offensive lineman, we got Logan Jones, Iowa. We got, I always butcher this name, Ola Vavega Aon from Penn State. We got J.C. Davis, Illinois. Riley Malman, Wisconsin. Emmanuel Pregnon, Oregon. So we got 3 Nittany Lions, 3 Buckeyes, 2 Ducks. We already know. We know who are the teams we're expecting to run this conference. So this is our Into the News segment. We're going to head right into our next segment. We're going to have Governor Reacts. It's going to look a little bit differently, but we'll be right with you. Give me 1 second. Sorry about that. You could. All right. So we're gonna start this segment over because I didn't copy in my vocals. But John Mateer, I just made this template today. John Mateer is number 1 on this list. There's a lot to like about John Mateer, and sorry for everybody who's watching this audio. Like the last minute was just background noise. Sorry about that. So John Mateer, number 1 on this list, and if you didn't get a chance to see a lot of John Mateer last year at Washington State, he was absolutely incredible in Pullman last year. Him and his offense coordinator Ben Arbuckle, they're both in Norman now, and it's going to be exciting to see both of them do their thing in Oklahoma this year. Look, like what Oklahoma's been able to do is they got, Brent Venables, a stud offensive coordinator, and Ben Arbuckle. Also, what they've been able to do is also, let Brent Venables do what he's magnificent at. And what he's magnificent at is defense. He can also focus on special teams as well. So their offense is going to be nice. They got a kid in the portal in Jaden Ott who had a down year last year. And a lot of people probably forgot about Jaden Ott, but I'm telling you, he's going to be spectacular in this system. Watch out for Oklahoma. Even with a difficult schedule, watch out for Oklahoma. So I love the fact that when Bleacher Report made this list, they didn't just go with chalk picks. I think they truly wanted to deep dive and figure out. And of course, they got 2 layups on here, but they really wanted to figure this thing out and deep dive this. So, we see it the way we want to see it. So, John Mateer, number 1. Coming up, number 2 on this list, we got Demon Claiborne from Wake Forest. And 3-6 Mafia, a long time ago, had an album called, I'm showing my age a little bit, but I don't care, had an album called The Most Known Unknowns. And The Most Known Unknowns was built on the premise of, our music, you just don't know who we are. And that's kind of like Claiborne. He's one of the most known unknowns. Like, he's a dog. He played on a bad team this year. They got a new head coach this year. This kid is dynamic in a return game. He had a kick return for a touchdown last season. He's dynamic carrying the ball. He's dynamic as a pass catcher. So I love the fact that Bleacher Report had him on this list. He definitely deserved it. Coming up at number 3 on this list, we're looking at Desmond Reed from Pitt. Really underrated player when we think about it from the grand scheme of things. And there's just some really good players in the ACC, and they don't get a lot of hype. There's just really good players, but the fact that Claiborne ran for 1,000 yards last year. Desmond Reed averaged 155 all-purpose yards per game last year. Like, these kids are dynamic, so I love the fact that they really took that most exciting thing to the next level. Coming in at number 4, we got Nick Singleton for Pitt. And he had a dynamic year in 2024. I've said it before in the show. I do prefer Katron Allen a little bit over Nick Singleton. Even though I think Nick Singleton is more of a home run hitter, I think he's always going to average more yards per carry. I just like Katron Allen's game. So he got like that old school type of mentality, that approach. Number 5 on this list, we got Jeremiah Smith for Ohio State. We saw what he did as a true freshman last year. Dynamic. It's not too many players I see them play as a freshman. I say, yeah, this kid is ready for the next level. Jeremiah Smith is one of those exceptions. The only other one is Adrian Peterson. I think Adrian Peterson after a couple games as a true freshman. I say, yeah, he's ready for the NFL now. And I don't feel that way about a lot of players. I think in the entire time I've been watching this sport, those might be the only 2 that I feel that way. You just watch them, just look like they've been playing this game for years. And that 17, 18-year-olds, they look like grown men out there. And they look like they playing, with little boys when they playing with 22 and 23-year-olds. So, Jeremiah Smith, number 5 on this list. Coming at number 6, I was surprised by this one. Josh Cameron, huge fan of Josh Cameron. He's one of those guys who's dynamic in the passing game. He's also dynamic in the return game. And it's weird because, in college football 25, he's not overly fast. He's not overly fast in college football 26. But he's still elusive. He's still electric when he gets the ball in open space. And he's a really good return man. He's really good at wide receiver. He's a huge reason why I'm so high on Baylor this upcoming season. And I just can't wait to see them play. I can't wait to see them. They will be there on Tuesday, the first day of Big 12 Media Days. Can't wait to talk to everybody at Baylor, from the staff, from the SIDs, from the players to the coach. Coach Aranda. I'm just excited to meet with them. Number 7 on this list, Anthony Hill Jr. He's another guy as a true freshman who truly jumped off the page. When I remember that game where Texas marched into Tuscaloosa and left with a W. But he's a tackling machine, man. He really is. He can rush the passer, sideline to sideline. He will be one of the first 10 names called in the 2026 NFL draft. I don't care what type of season he has. He's that dynamic. And then the last person on this list is Caleb Downs, safety, Ohio State. And I proposed a question. If you look at the thumbnail, if you're watching this on YouTube, if you're watching this on either one of the Twitters, or X, I'm sorry, you might not be able to see it, but is Caleb Downs the best player in all of college football? Is he? Like, in your opinion, who, in your opinion, is the best player in all of college football? Is it a Jeremiah Smith? Do you feel like it's somebody, dynamic like a DJ Lagway or Lenore Sellers? Or is it like, Anthony Hill Jr.? I think Caleb Downs, for my money, is the best player in all of college football. Everything he's going to be able to do. I'm interested to see how he fits in that Matt Patricia system. We do know that Jim Knowles is at Penn State now. So, just looking at this, I feel really strongly about, this list. I like it a lot. And it's rare that, I react to a list and I'm a fan of it. I like it. I felt like they were creative. They took their layups, but they also got creative with some of their picks. So we're going to get right into our next segment, and it's governor ruling. All right, so for our governor ruling segment, we're going to get into the new era of NIL, and it's finally here. We're kind of calling it the NIL 2.0. I'm excited about it. I think that college football is headed in the right direction from a semantic perspective, and I'm only speaking from a semantic perspective because, we can sit here and point out a million things that's wrong with the sport off the field. On the field, I'm not sure how many. You might struggle to point out one thing wrong with the game on the field. But off the field, there's a lot of things we can say about the game. So, what should we expect from this new era of NIL? My phone never stops ringing, bro. I'm definitely changing my number. Not even playing. Alrighty. So, I also forgot to mention some people, some honorable mentions that could have been on that Bleacher Report list, even though I didn't mention them. We'll mention them on this governor ruling segment, and then we'll get back to our point. Isaac Brown, Duke Watson, Louisville. Huge fan of both of them. They could have been on that most exciting list. Lenore Sellers wasn't on that list, but I believe they weren't trying to go with chalk picks. DJ Lagway wasn't on that list. Blake Horvath from Navy. We've been talking him up at CFB Nation for a while now. Kyle Lewis, linebacker from Pitt. He's real deal. I saw a question earlier. Who was left off the top 10 defensive players list? Kyle Lewis. That's easy. If you watch any ACC ball, like I've seen Pitt play in person. If you watch any ACC ball, Kyle Lewis is real deal. So, but anyway, let's get back to this segment. So, it's officially July 1st, which means we got this NIL 2.0. And the world of college football and college sports as a whole just changed forever. We all know about Claudia Wilkin. Let's applaud her. She did a magnificent job with the House versus NCAA settlement. It is officially kicked in, and we've entered the revenue sharing era. Boosters are no longer the power brokers. They still are, but not just the boosters. Schools can now play athletes directly. We saw what the Big Ten, I believe it was, and the Big 12 did with the PayPal thing. That way, the money can be shared, via PayPal or via Venmo directly to the players. It's cool, and I like that. So we're gonna break this all down on the segment, kind of like where we at with it. Some of the hiccups we may face in year one of this thing, but I think we are getting to a point to where I say, okay, now a lot of people who are purists and follow this sport for a long time probably aren't comfortable with the semantics of the sport now. They wish players weren't getting paid. Newsflash, players have always gotten paid. Just it was done illegally. Now we have a legal forum, for these players to get paid. But, as of today, schools are no longer hiding behind boosters or collectors like we know they've been doing for years. They can now pay athletes directly straight from the athletic department's budget. We're talking about up to $20 million per year per school, with the number rising over time. This doesn't replace scholarships. It stacks on top of them. That's important news. Athletes can now be on full ride and get paid. It's professionalized college sports without officially calling players employees just yet, but we'll probably get there. So this is kind of cool. So we broke this down on the show before, but in case you missed that episode, we're going to break it down again. So how will this $20.5 million likely be spent? There are no sport-specific rules, no caps, no minimums per team, but here how schools are expected to break it down. So football, the big enchilada, 75%. That's roughly $15.3 million that'll be going to the players from football. When I tell you that college football is reaching that peak era, it truly is reaching the peak era because, we look at it and we say that, no other sport The college basketball is probably the closest, but no other sport offers as many college football games in like all time slots. Like even at the 12 o'clock slot, which is 9 a.m. on the West Coast, 11 a.m. Central Time, you can still see 4 or 5 games that are on. And if you have ESPN Plus, you got more games at your disposal. If you want to watch some FCS games, you want to watch some HBCU games, you want to watch some G5 games, you got even more games at your disposal. College football is feeding families and feeding communities. A lot of these towns that we know, like the Columbuses of the world, or we talking about the Red Hawks of Miami of Ohio and Oxford, Ohio, feeding communities. Ann Arbor, Michigan, feeding communities. Oxford, Mississippi, communities are fed off of college football. They're truly fed off of college football. Like some of these towns are in really like rural areas, and the university is the biggest thing popping, and football is king. It's a great time to be a fan of college football. It's truly a great time to be a fan of college football. It really is. Like when we think about it from the grand scheme of things, like, college football feeds a lot of people. Now, a lot of these people that is feeding don't put college football on the way that they're supposed to. Now, that may be an argument for another day, but I promise you they don't put on the way that they're supposed to. They really don't. When you think about how many families are fed off of college football, but they don't put the sport to the forefront. Like, it's so difficult to watch it every day. Like, we don't even see it force-fed to us on cable television. Like, we want to watch it, we gotta go find the CFB Nations of the world. We gotta go find the Josh Pates of the world, the Joe Klatz of the world. We gotta go find the Craning companies of the world. Like these entities that I'm mentioning, like they deserve to be on television. Hell, Greg McElroy, who's a dog, he's on ESPN, but it's on ESPN YouTube. Like, and he's calling games every weekend. Like, really a great mind, an elite thinker. And I love what Andy and Ari do at On3. There's so many great people, what I'm saying, but it's like it's put on a internet base, like, what I'm saying, like it's not streamed on cable television like it should be. And even though college football feeds a lot of people, so that's crazy that you look at collegiate athletics, college football is king. 75% of that money goes to that, and another 15% go to men's basketball and women's basketball. I think that gap should be a little closer, at least at the collegiate level. So yeah, football is king. Schools have the freedom to allocate however they want. A basketball first program like Duke might put more in hoops. A powerhouse like Texas or Alabama, they might keep loading up in football. It's based on your needs, but I think when we're looking at the average Power 4 school, $15 million is going into that football bucket. So that's phenomenal. So scholarship limits are gone, kind of. They're not. So first we used to have like that 85 scholarship limit, and then you'll have a bunch of walk-ons, but most teams carry around 120 players. When a bulk of those players being walk-ons. Now it's 105 scholarship athletes. And one of the things that Claudia Wilkin did so magnificently is, she made sure that the walk-ons weren't in a forgotten piece of the puzzle. Like, she really did her homework. Not only did she hold the schools accountable, not only did she hold the NCAA accountable, she also held these schools accountable as well, and just demanding information and demanding that these walk-ons aren't forgotten about. Because we get the dope story every year. A player who was a walk-on, they're paying their own tuition, they ain't got the NIL money like the stud quarterback does, so they out here scraping and make a way, but they putting that work in. They putting overtime in the weight room. They always nagging the coaches and bugging the coaches, and putting that time in the film room. And then it's so good when we see a player who was a walk-on who get that scholarship, and you just see the way that the teammates treat them, the way that the coaching staffs treat them. Like, that's got to be a great feeling. Like, to imagine telling your parents, right? Let's say you had a scholarship at said university, right? And maybe you got a partial scholarship at said university, but let's say it was a lower level university, and your parents who really don't got the financials to send you, to the bigger university, they're telling you, hey, go to that university, work your butt off, and go to another one. Then the kid says, no, I really want to go to Texas, and I know that team is stacked, and I know I'll be ninth on the depth chart. I know I have to pay my own way. They're like, whoa, like, how you gonna pay it? And some of these kids are probably paying it via financial aid. So those stories were always heartwarming. I used to love seeing them on game day. Game day does such a great job. I think that's, it's going to sound real crazy, but stay with me. I think that's part of the reason why it's so difficult to put mainstream, college football shows on mainstream television, because how great of a job Game Day does. It's about the storylines for me. College football has always been about the storylines. Like, I remember the piece that Game Day did on Jordan Travis. And, his plight from Louisville to, Florida State, and how he almost gave up on football. That's crazy when you think about that. Or the piece they did on Jalen Hurts, getting benched in a game, but still, cheering on Tua. Going to the quarterback whisperer and Lincoln Riley and, making something of himself. Now he's a Super Bowl winning quarterback. That is effing phenomenal, dude. So, the way that it is pieced together, the fans, the signs, College Game Day is the epitome of not just in college football. I think the only other show I could think of that comes close to it, but it's not it, but it's still a great show, is Inside the NBA, what they did on TNT for years, and I hope that ESPN don't change that product too much. But nothing comes close to College Game Day, especially the football side of College Game Day. Nothing comes close to that. The way they piece their stories together, the surprise guest pickers, the fans, the signs and stuff that they're holding up, it's just incredible. But anyway, scholarship limits are gone, but kind of. All right. So overall, you had unlimited walk-ons, 85 scholarships. Like I said, most teams carry 120 people. So if you start doing the math for that, you got 35 players who are walking on. That's the new rules, a total 105 players, all of whom can be on scholarship. This means fewer walk-on spots, more competition, less bloat, and those fringe guys, it's make or break time. So current players are grandfathered in, so no one's getting cut today. This will phase in over time. Every NIL deal over $600 must be reviewed. I think we get transparency here. I think a lot of the, guys like me, who commentate on this game and commentate on this game, 365, when we get to the off season, like I said, we can talk more about the semantics. We can talk about the things that we need reform on. But, I think some of the things that we need with the NIL is just a little bit transparency on spending. Because on what, another school thinks that Ohio State spent last year may be different from what Ohio State reports that they spend. Now I think, with the NIL go, we kind of have like, this is what you really spent. You said you spent this and we thought you spent that. I think we'll probably be somewhere in the middle of what, they believe that they spent versus what they actually spent. So athletes will still make money on the outside of what the schools pay them, but now there's oversight and verification for real this time. And I think this is important. This is truly important. Every NIL deal over $600 must be reviewed. That is important. And I know you guys probably don't see it that way, but I 100% see it that way. It's important that we have transparency. It really is. So we've been hearing this talk about a college sports commission. We really need it. I'm just hoping that they got the right players in place, the right pieces in place, so these things can be enforced. If you violate a rule and it's in black and white and you violate it, you need to be held accountable for it. That does not mean, and that doesn't, what I said was, if it's in black and white and you violated the rule, you should be held accountable for it. Don't try to penalize, UVA because you can, but, you turn a blind eye if Alabama did it, if the team in Tuscaloosa did it. Don't do that. If they broke the rule, don't matter who it is, it all needs to be held to the same standard. That's why I don't like gray areas. I hate gray areas. Let's have it in black and white. Let's have it succinct. Let's have it be as detailed as it need to be. All right? So the credibility of the system depends on, it depends on a lot. So who's in and what happens if you're out? As of July 1st, that's the date, all Power 4 schools and Notre Dame are required to comply with the new rules. Other schools can choose to opt in or opt out, but let's be honest, if you opt out, you're immediately at a recruiting disadvantage. You have no choice, my boy. You have no choice. So this is great. Like I said, this is something that I wanted to cover. I think it's important, that we covered it, man. It's time for these players to get paid, get the payments that they deserved. I told you I don't like either one. I don't like when the coaches had 100% of the power, and I feel like the players got a lot of power now. I want more of a happier medium, and maybe the general manager can kind of be a liaison between the two. But, I like where we at for now. So we're going to go ahead and take an ad break. Man, don't touch that dial. We'll be right back. Look at you out here using all these other sports books, and you ain't even using the best one. BetUS. Get 125% match bonus when you use the promo code CFB Nation. Yeah, you heard me correctly. 125% match bonus on your first deposit using that code CFB Nation. We know that college football is in the offseason, even though we don't celebrate that. CFB Nation, we do college football 24/7. But there are plenty of things for you guys to bet on.
Who will have the most wins? OKC Thunder or Cleveland Cavaliers? Can Luka and LeBron make it all mesh to make it to the play-in tournament? Maybe you're a college basketball guy ready to risk it all for Florida to make it to the big dance.
Basketball isn't for you? Maybe you're a football guy. Well, BetUS got you covered with this year's UEFA Championship. Can Liverpool or Barcelona win it all? Will Erling Haaland or Harry Kane lead their teams to victory?
May is going to get popping when the Kentucky Derby hits town. BetUS has you covered in that way too, with all major horse racing events. Point is, type in that promo code CFB Nation and go get that money.
Alrighty, welcome back. So around the nation, man, I really am happy. Yesterday made me happy. Then we knew it was coming. We knew it was kind of a foregone conclusion that, in order for Pac-12 to be recognized, by the FBS as a conference, they had to get that 8 pivotal school. They already had 8, but Gonzaga is, participating in basketball, not participating in football. So we knew that they needed to get that pivotal number in order to be recognized by the FBS. And when I looked at the Pac-12, I think we always hoped something like this could happen. I think we knew to a degree that they would never be what it was. I think it's okay to say that, and I'm hoping I'm not disrespecting anyone or hurting anybody's feelings when I say that. It won't be what it was. It just won't. Peak Pac-10, Pac-12, Pac-8, whatever you remember, that ball was always exciting. To me, my favorite conference to watch in 2023 was the Pac-12. You think about the studs you had at quarterback, from a Noah Fafita, from a Caleb Williams, Cameron Rising when he was doing at Utah, Bo Nix what he was doing in Eugene. I think that was the year we also had DJ U. He was in Corvallis. Cam Ward was in Pullman. It was just so many exciting quarterbacks. Even Jaden Rashada at Arizona State. It was a terrible year, but even that first game of the season, it's this Jaden Rashada kid can be pretty good. You just look at the dynamic players that were in that conference that year. It was just truly incredible. I would love for it to be what it was, but I don't think it can be what it was, man. Washington is now in the Big Ten. Oregon is now in the Big Ten. USC is now in the Big Ten. UCLA is now in the Big Ten. And guess what? I don't think they're coming back. I truly don't. We look at Arizona State now in the Big 12. Won the Big 12 last year. Arizona in the Big 12. Colorado in the Big 12. Utah in the Big 12. Could some of those teams come back? Maybe. But I think, 2030 would be the pivotal year, only because I believe that Stanford and Cal can come back. Does that automatically bolster the conference? Yes, but does it make it what it was? I'm not so certain. But I said all of that to say this. I am super proud of the job that Teresa Gold did. She's done a magnificent job. And the fact that people are commentating and saying, yeah, but will we take this conference seriously? I will. And guess what? The Pac-12 gave us some parameters to take it seriously as well. They gave us some key metrics that we're going to get into a little bit later. But I think this conference can be successful. Now, how is it labeled? Will we be calling the G5 the G6? Will we be calling the Power 4 the Power 5 again? I don't know, because I don't deem it a power conference just yet. But there's some moves that they can make that can deem it a power conference again. I just told y'all in 2030 that can happen with Cal and Stanford. And, and maybe they can pry, Colorado back to the Pac-12. You never know. Because, Colorado, I think, was in the Big 12 before. Then they left to go to the Pac. So it'll be interesting to see if that's something that they will be interested in. But right now, it's just that the bag isn't big enough. It's good that Teresa Golden Company was able to get the media rights deal. I love the teams that they have. I would like to see them do more. Getting, now they're in Central Time. It'd be interesting if they can get into the Eastern Time. So, like I said, it's not bad. So let's look at the new Pac-12 lineup for 2026. We got Boise State, Colorado State, Fresno State, Oregon State, San Diego State, Texas State, Utah State, Washington State, plus, Gonzaga for basketball. So I was telling you guys earlier, there's some key metrics, and we talked about the schools that they lost. USC, UCLA, Oregon, Washington went to the Big Ten. Utah, Arizona State, Colorado went to Big 12. Cal and Stanford went to the ACC. They lost 10 schools, bro. And I think if George Kliavkoff would have been more aggressive and kind of didn't have that wait and hope mantra, I think he'd been able to salvage some of it. I think a school like Washington was probably gone anyway. Just because, from an academia perspective, them going to the Big Ten, it's kind of a match made in heaven if we're speaking candidly, right? So I think some of these schools were gone no matter what. I am happy that UCLA and USC get to continue their rivalry, but when I think about the Pac-12 and I think about some of the great players that's played in their conference, man, it's a little heartbreaking that it isn't the same team. But to completely come back from the dead, think about it. We were saying RIP just a few seasons ago to the Pac-12. We never thought this would happen, and major kudos to Washington State and Oregon State, because they believed, they truly believed. And I wonder how Gloria Nevarez feels now. I think that the Mountain West will still remain a conference, but friends close, enemies closer. Like, it seemed like Teresa Gold was able to just, talk freely to your teams, and we know they got a lawsuit right now. And I can't blame the Mountain West, can you? Like, we showed you mad love, we gave you our welcome mat. We let you kicking in our home. You played your core conference games. We didn't know you was gonna be poaching, our teams at the same time. You should have kind of knew. You knew that they weren't going to, get down to lay down. You knew the Pac-12 wanted to be the Pac-12 again. We knew that, Washington State and Oregon State, stayed for a reason. They felt like, hey, they balanced the powers a little bit more, Because think about it, when the original teams were there, like the USCs, UCLAs, Washingtons, the Utahs, the Colorados, and, they kind of, probably had more say-so than these two schools in Corvallis and in Pullman. But now they are running a conference. Like, how we say the SEC and the Big Ten is running the sport right now, from a semantic perspective, and they kind of, their ideologies are what's going to kind of take shape and take form for the future of the college football playoff. What does that look like? Whether it's, 2 additional teams and we go up to 14, or 4 additional teams and we go to 16, and we have the automatic qualifiers and we have the play-in games. A lot of that will come from Tony Petitti and Greg Sankey and how their ideologies mesh. Now, I do believe that the Big Ten and SEC are kind of having a cold war now. I don't think a lot of people want to speak on it, but if I'm speaking candidly, I do believe we're having a cold war right now. But looking at this situation, kudos to the athletic departments at both Oregon State and Corvallis and the team from Pullman and Washington State for staying the course, seeing this through. They knew it was going to be a difficult couple of seasons. They didn't know when there'll be a conference again. But they can say, we were here for the death of the Pac-12 and the revival of the Pac-12. So that's incredible. So the Pac-12 posted a post yesterday. They posted their teams. They changed their X banner and all of that stuff. But they also put in a graphic, and they put in a graphic of the last 4 seasons of football, the last 4 years, and a lot of conferences do this. They said the 4th best collective win percentage last 4 years with the new grouping of schools, and that's ahead of the ACC. So I think they're trying to make that name like, we could be a power conference, like the 4th best win percentage. Of course, the competition isn't the same, but this new collection of teams have won 54.7% of their games. 5 of the 8 teams ranked in the final college football top 25. That's impressive. 6 of the 8 teams ranked in the final AP poll top 25. That's impressive as well. So, seeing that, only the SEC, Big Ten, and Big 12 were better. So while the brand might be bruised, the ball is still elite. And I think that may hold true. I think that's pretty spectacular. The fact that they were able to put these stats together. We've seen the SEC do it. And the SEC, at their spring meetings in Destin, Florida, was kind of, letting it be known like, hey, we're the best conference, and here are the reasons that we are the best conference. And the one thing that they continue to attack was the gauntlet that their teams have to play week in and week out. So like I said, that's why I feel like it's a cold war between the conferences. But it's kind of cool to see the Pac-12 is back. It makes me happy. Is it what it used to be? No. But is it something that I'm willing to settle for? Absolutely. And shout out to the lady we see on the screen right now to the right. And Teresa Gold, man. Shout out to her. This does not happen without her, if we're being honest. So, what are they now? So here's where the identity crisis begins. Are they still a power conference? Nah, not by brand, not by budget, not by playoff access guarantees yet. Are they group of 5? I believe so. I believe they're group of 5. Even though the numbers say that they, their teams as a collection of teams are better than the ACC right now. But, I think when you look at the construction of these rosters, I think Boise State can be a really good team. The resources are plentiful in Corvallis and in Pullman. But, what does this look like? I think we'll get a 16-team playoff in 2026. I truly do believe that. I just wonder how would this look, because I doubt that, Big 12 or ACC is going to want them to become a Power 5 school, and then they're taken away from, a possible spot by one of their teams. Group of 5 is going to be like, are they truly group of 5? And then, one of the best teams, you're looking at a Boise State or Oregon State or Washington State. You're like, damn, these teams could be, that G5 playoff, team year in and year out. So, what will they be classified under? And that, I think that's something that a lot of people are kind of thinking about right now in the back of their mind. Like, I wonder how we're going to do this game thing, as it pertains to, who make the playoff, what conferences get what, how many we get at the P4 level, how many we get at the group of 5 level. So it's going to be interesting. So I don't know what they're going to classify it as. I told you guys yesterday, I don't really want anything to do with that. But it still intrigues me, though, if I'm speaking honestly. So, the domino effect across the G5. Texas State joining the Pac-12 means that the Sun Belt drops to 13, and now the G5 carousel is spinning again. So, here's what's coming. Sun Belt likely adds one more team. They're eyeing La Tech, they're eyeing Western Kentucky or Middle Tennessee. Conference USA might shrink again if they lose those programs, possibly calling up Tarleton State. That's been kind of what everybody's thinking that they're going to end up calling up. Mountain West has been gutted. They lost 5 programs, but they're going to add Northern Illinois, and I believe they're adding UTEP as well. The AC is stable for now, but don't be surprised if Memphis looks west, UTSA, Tulane, South Florida. Getting South Florida would be pivotal for the Pac-12, and I know they aren't a specific, a team that's on the Pacific coast, but this here league we talk about, this conference expansion thing, that this new era of college football is about playing in different time zones, Pac-12, and I know you guys know that already. But if you're able to get a USF with a coach like Alex Golesh, I think that would be impressive. So I would love to see if they're able to get them. Tulane is one of those schools. You look at what John Summerall has been able to do. It's just logistics for those schools. Like, how does that feel? What does the travel schedule look like? Because I talked about yesterday how difficult it is for some of these ACC programs, more specifically Stanford and Cal, and all of the traveling that they got to do. Just think about the equipment and some of the traveling they got to do with the equipment and the equipment alone. So it's going to be really interesting. So, the Power 4 conference outlook is really everything staying the same. We heard Bret Bielema of the Big 12 say opening speech at the Big 12 Media Days last year that they aren't looking to expand. They're just looking to build even further with the programs that are part of it. SEC, I think, is the same. Even though there's been speculation that they're interested in UNC or they're interested in a team in Tallahassee, I think everybody's interested in Clemson. Make no doubt about it. But like I said, I don't think Big 12 making no move, ACC making no moves, or Big 10 making any moves. So I think this is a grand move for the Pac-12. I'm interested to see what other moves they make. I'm expecting 1 or 2 more additions to be made, and those other conferences who lose these teams will be scrambling. I'm expecting those before the 2026 season. I'm expecting the media deal to look a little different, before, because I think they did secure a deal. So maybe it'll be that 2027 that they can get a little bit more money. I think it's a weird range. Like, I think 4 to 10 million was the range, I think, that schools will be collecting from the conference with the current TV deal. I would like to see more, though. Continue to be active. Continue to be aggressive, Teresa. You're doing a fantastic job for people who are like criticizing or just don't think that she's doing enough, I think she's done a great job. Like, you know, she was handed lemons and she made lemonade, bruh. I'm telling you, Clearkov did not do her any favors. I promise you, he didn't do her any favors. So, waited and hoped, and you know, that's what happened. So, we're gonna go ahead and go back to our cold opening screen. It's been a fun episode. Another hour in the books per usual. We talked about quite a lot today. I'm super excited for what's coming this upcoming week, the content that we about to bring you guys. I truly can't wait for the Big 12 Media Days. Can't wait to go live from there and give you everything I know. ACC Media Days, you guys should be expecting 2.5 hour episodes. I'm going live early, so you know, if you gotta catch the replay on Spotify because I'm going live so early, my apologies. But you know, it is what it is. I would rather, before these teams hit, you know, the main stage or in these breakout rooms, I go ahead and give you guys 2.5 hours of content. Because, you know, Moon got content to work on while he's there. Jalen got content to work on. There's other entities we want to work with while we're there. Also, we had Radio Row this year, so we have a little bit more access than we had previously. But, like I said, I would love to get there early before everybody else do. I'm an early bird. I wake up around 3:30, 3:45 every morning. And that's not going to change. So I will get up early. I will hit the gym. And then I'm up there at 6 o'clock. We live. And we're gonna talk shop. And I'm going to try to do the same. Big 12 Media Days will be a little bit different. Ain't quite figured that out yet. But we are doing a marathon, 24-hour Governor College Football Marathon starting at Sunday, 8 p.m. I got to figure out how I'm going to like set it up. But I do want some trivia questions in between episodes. So, like I said, I'll probably have exactly 24 episodes, maybe 25, with the little trivia questions popping up at the end of each episode. You know, facts about the show and facts about CFP Nation, stuff like that. So I'm excited for it. You know, I look at this how I look at television. I know it's the internet, but you know, we used to get the dope, especially around New Year's. We used to get the dope. You know, 24-hour. You know, I Love Lucy, or you remember when Nick at Night first became a thing. But yeah, so it's been a great time, man. Had a lot of fun on this show. It's been a crazy day. It's been a fun day at the same time, though. So I always like to say there are no more victories in the sport that survive and advance. That's why college football has the greatest regular season. And until next time, man, you all take care. And we're going to be back. Same bad time, same bad channel, 4 p.m. tomorrow, Eastern Standard Time. I believe we're going with College Football Showdown tomorrow as well. So I got to work on a rundown for that. You all take care. Governor of college football, we're going to recap ACC.
Hey, that's CJ
defensive
on
minds.
the
They have to be better on that side of the ball.